Okay, cool. Cool beans. All right. So we're going to be reading ghost stories off of paranormal ghost stories or paranormal encounters. And I am live on both YouTube and TikTok. So it's been a minute since I've been live. So welcome. How's everyone doing tonight? Okay. So this is a thread called What's Your Story That Made You Believe in Ghosts? So I haven't seen a ghost face on, but I've seen a full figure walk by me. I've heard things such as someone walking in the hallway when I'm home alone. I've also found tiny fingerprints on the inside of my glass door when no children have been in my house. I've also heard whispers and voices. What experiences have made you believe in the paranormal? Let's look into the comment section. All right. Curdy says, I used to have a serious sleep paralysis episodes. I know there's a scientific explanation. I just think that it's total BS. I could absolutely feel something evil on my chest inches away from my face, and I knew that if I opened my eyes, I would see some deeply horrifying stuff. I've never opened my eyes, but it was a presence that felt like it hated me more than anything and wanted to make me suffer before it killed me. Thankfully, when I moved out of that house, the episodes immediately had stopped. Oh, goodness. Jeez. Also, welcome, guys. Thank you for the likes. Thank you, thank you. I'm also live on YouTube, and on my YouTube side, you can also see the stories and comments that I'm reading off of it. So if you want to see all that stuff, feel free to join me over on the YouTube side. If not, no worries. IDEK says, I saw a group of ghosts carrying torches in Alabama. Oh, I see what you're trying to say. Clever. Okay. Disastrous says, at a cemetery checking out graves when I was a teenager, I heard a small voice say, mine, from a few feet away. I looked up to see a young girl in a little dress standing behind my mother, who was knelt down inspecting the grave. When I moved my eyes a little, she was completely gone. I walked over to where my mom was, and it was the grave of a young girl. That sealed it for me. I am a Christian and I know there are spirits in the Bible, but the experience convinced me for the rest of my life that ghosts are a thing. Hello, Dyslexic Doc. And again, anyone joining me, you can join me over on the YouTube side. You can see the stories on there. If not, no worries. Thank you for the follow, AJ. So this one is called Disastrous Step, or that's the user. They said, oh wait, that's not a ghost story. Let's keep going. Let's see. Okay. Consistent says, I've always believed when I was 5, I was walking home from the bus stop and came across a teenage girl crying. She was dressed in like 60s hippie clothing and lived in the middle of nowhere. So I knew all the kids and I asked why she was crying and if she was okay. She shook her head and kept walking. I turned around and she was gone. It was very odd. I was a youth pastor in church in a small city, and the third floor bathroom was haunted. The water would turn on the sink when I was in there, and it was one of those old fashioned sinks with separate faucets in the corners for hot and cold. I've been sitting there, and the water just turned on its own. There were other times we would hear kids' sneakers squeaking, running up and down the hallway. Oof. Oh, thank you, Dyslexic Duck. I feel like scary bathroom, anything like haunted or paranormal in bathrooms are just scary because you are in your most vulnerable state. So I'm reading scary stories off of Reddit. If you join me over on the YouTube side, you can see everything that I'm reading. So feel free to join me on there. If not, no worries. I'm gonna have to get like a water bottle here soon because uh I am so dehydrated. Okay. This one says, Go ask Alice. When I was a kid, we lived in a big old house that had been converted into an upstairs downstairs duplex. but it was all family living in there. One morning, I was awake but still in bed, and I saw this really fancy looking couple walk through my wall and across my room and through the other wall. I told my mom about it, and she had me describe the people. It turns out three other members of the family had seen this lady I saw, but I was the only one who ever saw the vulnerability. Later on, I found out that my mom and two aunts used a Ouija board, and the ghost said her name was Emily. They confirmed through town records that an Emily had lived there and was buried in this town cemetery a couple of miles away. Guys, oh my gosh. Tell your stories. Yes, that is so true. That is so true. Yes, I feel like roaches are scarier than ghosts. Like, run for the hills. Sorry. Okay, awesome. So, okay, this one is, I can't say their username. I think it's them. So I lived in a house that for the first day we set foot in. Things were happening all, but we loved that house. We loved living there. We had parties and lots of paranormal experiences that on at least one occasion got very difficult. So there was this weird thing, despite oodles of stories about our time in this house. I didn't have a point of reference for what was going on. I just knew that things were happening. Years later, as I was talking with an old schoolmate from the time period, it was around the mid 1970s, I asked her if her house was haunted. And she was like, oh my God, yes, and began recounting her experiences when she used to visit or spend the night. So that's when I gained a point of reference. Oh, so her house was haunted. And that explains all the weird happenings. Duh. One of the strangest things that occurred was several months after we moved in. Our father was surveying the doors in the house. It was all the sliding glass. And decided that they were not secure enough. So he had come home and attached slide hatches on the top and bottom of each set of doors, two doors each entry, six entryways, and just one front door. Do the math, that was a lot of latches. So the next morning, he came down to all of those latches being cut from the inside. So then our parents were like, okay, maybe we should have an exorcism performed. But ultimately, they decided we heard voices late at night when everyone was asleep, and they would talk loud enough to wake me awake. There were full body apparitions and very obvious footsteps through our parents and through our parents' bedrooms and more. It would take her. Oh my God. Sam, you're in good company. I promise nothing bad's gonna happen. All right. So if you guys join me over on the YouTube side, for anyone that's joining, feel free to check it out and see. If not, no worries. That is a okay. What's up with my bangs? What's up with you being judgmental? All right. So this is Wendy. This is my very first paranormal experience, and I just think it's so cool when people like don't know like baby bangs or alternative culture or anything like that. It's like fucking hilarious. Like it's just like that's gonna make me feel a certain way. I'm sure you probably have very basic, like fashion sense and very basic haircut. This is like I don't know. I feel like commentary on this, whatever. Okay, cool. Then I'm sorry then in my end, but I see it all the time when yeah, it's like every time I do the baby bang look because I like to do like the headband stuff and it makes my bangs look cute. People like make comments and I'm like, what is that supposed to mean? Like, okay. All right. So this is my very first paranormal experience, and there have been many of it. When I was 4 or 5, I was at my grandparents' house, and I went into my grandparents' bedroom to explore these out of the dresser that she let me play with. It was maybe around noon when this place. I opened a little door to the dresser, and in the door, there stood this little dark man. He was very dark, but he was a shadow, and he was very friendly in behavior. He tried talking to me, but I was terrified and said nothing to him. I slammed the door shut and I told my mother and my grandmother, but no one believed me. I've never forgotten it and how scared I was. I've always wondered what or who he was. I've never seen this particular thing again. It did not look human, but human. I've always wondered if it was human. Oh my gosh, that is very creepy. Did I ever tell you guys that I had this like weird experience when I was in middle school? And I remember that me and one of my really good friends, who was my best friend at the time, and she lived in the neighborhood. Um, we were walking to my house. It was the house with you, but we would walk together. Houses, and it was a full moon on top of that. And I was like trying to scare her. So I was like looking at the full moon, and my friend said, "Don't look at that. Someone's gonna like come chase us." And I was just like pushing her buttons because I was like, "No, nothing's gonna happen." And so then, we hear footsteps, and we turn around, and it's this dark, like silhouette figure chasing after us. Now, I lived in this really small town where it was really safe. We would do this walk many of times. It was always there's also like a lot of good lights on the street, and it started chasing after us. We ran to my house and had a glass porch in the front, and we looked at this person or whatever it was, and it just like moved really weird. And I forgot about this experience because it was so strange, and it like stopped and then moved backwards across the street, but like looking at like you couldn't even see its face or anything. Like, yes, when it's dark, yeah, you can't see things, but you can see glimpses of like light reflecting off like, the highlight features of an individual. It was weird. It was really weird. But yeah. Anyway, that's what that story makes me think of. All right, so this one is called Unfathomable Dense. I've had 3 pretty specific things happen to me that made me a believer. And yeah, I'm reading stuff on Reddit. If you guys join me on YouTube, you can see the stories that I am reading if you guys want to see that. If not, no worries. You guys are welcome to stay also on TikTok. Either way is fine with me. But if you want to see it, no worries. Totally fine. Hi, JK. Yes, it's pretty late where I'm at. Okay. So the first experience was when I was 17 in high school. During the school play, we had a classic haunted auditorium. A janitor or something had hung himself from one of the catwalks, and while it sounded kind of typical and cliche, I generally wore it off as BS. That said, I could never bring myself to go upstairs, even before knowing the story, because the air up there was very heavily and very unsettling. It always felt like someone was watching you up there. Nobody ever liked to go up there either, and alone. But there was one night we were doing a performance, and a few of my castmates and I were in a circle talking backstage while we waited for our cues. And as I was saying something, all of a sudden it felt like some kind of thick, vicious fluid dripped from this catwalk above all over the side of my head. Everyone I was talking with got really quiet as it happened and just stared at me as I tried to wipe it away. Even as I started wiping at it, it felt like it was vanishing into thin air, and my hand came away dry. When I asked if anyone else saw it, they all just quietly nodded and looked really spooked. I don't know if it was something residual from the man hanging himself or if it was some kind of like ectoplasm thing or what, but I know that for a fact that it wasn't anything natural that hit my head that night. All I do know is that I was standing directly underneath the spot where the man was supposed to have hung himself. The second time that comes to mind was from a year earlier when my older sister was regularly taking me to a group with her that practiced energy work and energetic healing. We would go once or twice a week and practice doing energy work for other people, learning to focus our intentions and receiving attunements to use different frequencies of energy work that could be put to different uses. It was a lot of fun, a lot of meditation, and we would work in a new form of energy every 2 to 3 weeks. Well, one time we went, the people who ran it decided we were going to be trying something a little different. That week, we all sat down in a large circle and held hands of the people on either side of us, and they put on some music. It was meant to induce us into a trance state. And collectively, we were focusing our energies on attuning to some form of higher light, like a higher light being from another plane or existence. Helmet that was visible, and it kind of sounded like a load of crap to me. But I figured I was there, so what was wrong with it? Anyway, we sat down, took each other's hands, and they put on the music, and we began our meditation. To this day, it was by far the deepest meditative state I've ever been in my entire life. I was definitely conscious that much. I snore like a fucker. Someone would have woken me up, or if I'd fallen asleep. So we were there for over an hour, and eventually, though, everything around me gradually melted away, and I began to feel the presence of several beings around me, who circled us curiously a bit before they became closer. They talked with each other and whispered to us, and after a while, one or more of them began to blend in here. It sounds creepy, I'm sure, but their presence was so comforting and relaxing, and they were so obviously benevolent and curious about us. Then it continues to be one of that continues to be one of about the most spiritual moving experience of my life. Oh wow. Okay. Interesting. I feel like that's a common thing I hear a lot is people feeling like a spirit or something is playing with their hair. I do see that happen from time to time. Thank you guys for the likes, if I haven't said so already. And those that are joining, if you want to join me over on the YouTube side, feel free. You can see what I'm reading. So if you guys are curious to see that, if not, no worries. All right, let's continue on. Let's see. Okay, this is a very, very long one. Okay, so it's the continue. So the same user, they made another post of it because they had their 3 paranormal experiences. So this is the last. This is like their last story of the other 2 that we told. Okay, so finally, this is the last one for my late 20s. So about 5 years prior to this last experience, myself and my ex and a friend of ours were all very into the Book of Mormon, the musical when it came out. And eventually we started to wonder how much of the content of the musical was actually true to beliefs of the Mormon church. Now, keep in mind, we smoked a lot of weed in those days, but rather than just looking it up online like normal people, we decided to go and attend one of their church services. Long story short, we ended up meeting regularly with our missionaries to learn about the church, and we were eventually baptized and became members. Of course, we had to claim belief multiple times in various aspects of their faith to get to the point, which we had exactly none of. But we were there to learn, so naturally we lied. And as far as the Mormons were concerned, we were as devout as could be for a little of 2 years. Now, this was a couple years before being beginning of my gender transition. So as someone who was considered male, I was able to receive what they called a priesthood. There are 2 of them, and I was eligible for the first, being a newly baptized man in the church, and they planned to convey it to me during a sacrament meeting. That's what they call a church service. Well, several of the older men, they called elders, took me to the front of the congregation and sat me down in a chair, and they all placed one hand on my head or shoulder, and the other hand was on the man next to them's shoulder, and they began to pray. I was shocked to realize, after having so many of them in my teens, that these men were giving me an energy attunement. Not that any of them would have known what that meant at the time, because that was exactly what it felt like. Um, for the record, an energy attunement feels like having a new kind of energy flow all over and into you. So allowing you to become more accustomed with it so that you tune in to that frequency. Anyway, fast forward to 27 post transition. I'm visiting a friend from high school who lives nearby that I haven't seen in about 7 or 8 years. Eventually, she tells me that she's been haunted by something that's followed her for the last year or more, and that the spirit is definitely malevolent and has taken up residence in the room adjacent to her and her boyfriend's bedroom. My friend had grown up in the Mormon church, and after talking with her about my own experiences in the church, we talked about receiving the first of the 2 levels of priesthood. And I was talking about how it compared to my many experiences with energy work. All of those years of energy work had made me especially sensitive to the energies, both positive and, of course, negative around me. And I'd felt that the entity's presence from the moment I walked into their place. I just hadn't realized exactly what it was until she finally told me. At the time, I had no idea what possessed me to make offer, but feeling the presence of that entity and having heard some of her experiences with it, I offered to help her get rid of it. I had never done anything like this before, but my friends were suffering because of it, and I couldn't just allow it to continue. So we started by praying together, sending prayers and blessings from the Bible and the Book of Mormon because she was the most familiar with those. And for a little while, the spirit became angry with us, and the air around us got so hot, and I could feel absolute contempt from it as I began trying to banish it and to tell it that it wasn't welcome. Now I knew enough about the energy work to know how to shield myself from feeling too much of what it was trying to dish out. But it still made a good effort. But after about 15 minutes of approaching it from the aspect of a fire and brimstone, in quote, you shall not pass kind of attempt, not getting much of anywhere except gaining its air, I realized that rather than trying to banish a spirit, I should have been trying to show it comfort and inviting it to leave, not as an unwanted guest, but as a wounded soul who needed to find its own to heal outside of tormenting my friend through its own suffering. I don't know how I came to this conclusion exactly, but it was just something that I could just feel. So we redirected our attempt and began invoking loving and gentle spirits, Mother Goddess from various old religions. We called on gods and goddesses alike whose domains were comfort and love and protection. We called angels to look after and guide this hurt entity to a place where it could recover itself in peace. At first, it seemed confused, and its agitation with me faltered, and it seemed to get more curious about me than anything. Last, we invoked the name of Hestia. I think I'm saying that right. The Greek goddess of the earth and a protector of the home, to watch over my friend's house and to keep her safe and unwanted spirits out. When everything was said and done, the entity was gone and the air in her home felt lighter. And it was easier to breathe, and for a little while, she cried on my shoulder and thanked me for helping. I was just in shock that I even had been able to. After over an hour of effort in trying to coax the spirit to leave, I was tired and needed to go home to rest. I've never been so mentally and spiritually tired as I was that night, and I needed to rest. But the second I got in my car, I could feel that the entity hadn't moved on, but instead it left the home and just waited for me to come out so that it could have latched onto me. It just felt like a chill wrapped itself around me as I sat there, and I very much had the image of a wounded hyena in my backseat, sitting there with the expectation of me being able to help it. But it felt wrong in its intention, like it wanted to latch onto me and feed on the positive and loving energy I had shown it, like some kind of tip. Oof, I feel like the air just be chilling. Hi, Alvy. I immediately began putting those defenses back in place and calmly talking with it and explained that it couldn't come with me because I couldn't help it do anything more than move on from its physical attachments that it had to find its own way from there. It stayed with me the whole way home, and even with the heater going on in my car, I was still cold. Eventually, I got home and got out of the car, and I told it that in no uncertain terms was it welcome in our house and that it needed to leave. I repeated it like a mantra, and on the way to the front door, did everything I possibly could to create a spiritual distance between myself and the entity right up until I opened the door. I took one step inside and turned around, looked straight at where I could feel it staring at me from outside, and said firmly, "You are not welcome. Goodbye." I closed the door and immediately pressed my hand to the back of the door and began saying my own blessing over the house, again invoking Hestia to watch over my home and keep us safe. But even as I did, I felt something slam into the door from the other side, and it physically shook against my hand. I repeatedly blessed and invoked the protections over the house and myself for the next week because I just felt it lurking at the edges of my awareness, like it was looking for a way in and to get closer to me. Eventually, I stopped feeling it there and assumed it must have moved on, hopefully, and found some level of comfort and peace for itself. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Can we unpack that? Like that's wild to me. So, first of all, to summarize everything for people that might have missed part of it, his spirit was at so this person's friend had a haunting, but not a haunting on the place, but on the person itself. And when they were trying to banish the spirit, they redirected it from instead of like trying to just banish it, they used like loving energy. So the spirit fed off of like that positivity. And when that person that was helping their friend banish the spirit walked out of his friend's house or her friend's house, um, the spirit was waiting for them and then try to latch on to this person. And you know what's interesting is that, like, I made a video on this a while ago on my TikTok about, like, spiritual attachments and, like, why spirits tend to, like, haunt places or, like, linger in places that they probably shouldn't, and one of them is spirits that are obsessed with like materialism or addiction of some kind, right? And when I was reading this, I thought about how like this spirit had an addictive personality. And so the reason why they were having a hard time moving on or what they're moving on to wherever they need to be is an addiction. Like they're addicted to people and personality types. And so that is what bounds them to this plane. At least like that's just like what I'm receiving on it. But if anyone else has any other thoughts, feel free to, chime in. That one was pretty good. I will say that. It was pretty good. Okay. And then for those of you that are joining me, I am live also on YouTube. So if you want to join me over on YouTube and see what I'm reading, feel free to do that. If not, no worries. So this one is from Gasp Spit. And they said, I lived in two haunted places, one for only a few months and the other place for 6 years. Up until I lived in the first house, I just considered myself open minded to the possibilities and never really knew for sure if anything existed beyond the living. After moving into my haunted apartment and enduring so much freaky stuff for years, it was undeniable to me. I've seen things move on their own, heard loud, unexplained noises that disappeared when you enter the empty space, and had some intelligent energy or entity communicate with daily tapping, etc. I had doors open on their own and also saw a child's handprint in the mirror of the steamy bathroom that I had just cleaned. So before my shower. There was unusual reoccurring nightmares in the apartment, all that disappeared when I moved. It's been years since I've experienced anything as far as I don't believe my current home is haunted. I almost miss that unmistakable fear and excitement from things you just can't explain. Okay, so this person's like, "Okay, I need hauntings. Thank you for the follow." Um, that's funny. Okay, let's see. Let me play my spooky music again 'cause I need that. Just set the tone. Okay, let me alright. So here's another one from Ruby. I'm not even gonna say that. Ruby. Okay, so this is what they're saying. I used to be the hype or I used to be the type who wouldn't believe in such things. I always thought that things such as ghosts were BS. Plus, I've never seen anything like that, not until one day at least. I remember it being a Thursday night somewhere around 10, and I would like to add on that my mom was out of the country at around that time because my grandma was very sick. So we stayed with my big brother. My younger brother left his friend's house for that day, and my sister had been at school that night around the time that myself and my brother went to the nearby Dollar Tree around the house. To make a visual representation of the walkway in my neighborhood, just imagine a small dirt road with trees. Oof, that already sounds good for spooky stuff. The neighborhood around that dirt road had some bad history a year before we moved there. The house down there from here, the house down from here, a man murdered his wife and committed suicide. The unnerving thing about walking around here is that there is absolutely no light there, which is weird because I figured they would have some lights around here, but you literally have to turn on your phone flashlight in order to see. Anyway, after myself and my brother bought some snacks, we were walking back to our house, and that's when my sister called me saying she was at the store. I was obviously pissed because not only was it getting late, but it's dangerous to be out there that late, and not to mention alone. Myself and my brother specifically told her to take an Uber home and to call us when she was almost home so we could be waiting outside of her. I told my brother that we had to get her, and my brother, being the bonehead he is, refused, saying he wasn't going to walk again in that dirt road because he was tired. This is where I made the stupid decision to walk by myself to go and get her. My brother just walked himself, and I stupidly began walking back to get my sister. At first, it wasn't that bad, I guess, because I'd always taken this route many with one of my brothers, that is, and that's when it began to get darker. At this point, I'm scared. See, I'm not a person who's scared of the dark. I'm just scared of what's in the dark. I started walking faster just so I can get out of the dumb dirt road. And that's when I heard it. I heard someone yelling. It was almost like a cry, but mixed with a yell. I tried to make excuses, thinking maybe it was someone pulling a prank or something. As I was getting closer out of the dirt road, I saw this silhouette, like this hunched silhouette. As I started walking to the side away from this hunched silhouette, I walked ahead trying to go get away, and that's when this old, pale, old looking lady came to sight. She was hunched over, almost silently crying. I didn't know what to do. Some part of me wanted to ask her if she was okay, due to the fact that she was an old lady and she could be hurt or something. But this other huge gut feeling told me to run and fast. That's when this lady let out a blood-curdling scream. Her head began to turn, but it wasn't normal. It was almost like demonic. At this point, I didn't care. I booked it out of there. I just ran. I ran until I couldn't feel my legs. I made it to the Dollar Tree, and at that, I saw my sister outside with a bag. She asked what happened and if I was okay. She had obviously noticed that I was out of breath and that I had ran. I didn't tell her anything that I'd seen. I just said I was in a hurry and that we should go home. Till this day, I haven't had anyone from my family, nor have I walked. I haven't told anyone in my family, nor have I walked through that dirt road again. Oh my God, that was a good one. That was creepy. Well, have a good night. Thank you for joining my live. Thank you. Yeah, that was creepy. Oh my God, that gave me chills. I would never walk. I would never walk by myself on a dirt road. I don't know if I could do that. But yeah, that's creepy AF. So kudos to her. Okay, so this one's from the Shadow King. My aunt's old house was one of those houses where the ground floor sort of went in a circle with sliding doors separating the rooms around a central staircase, while the second floor was pretty standard. It was on a hill at a crossroads, and it had a very uncomfortable feel about it. If you were the only one in your room on the ground floor, even if someone was just on the other side of the door, the air got very heavy, and it sounded muffled. Your ears would start ringing, and the hair on your neck would stand up like someone was watching. Anytime I would spend the night, I would wake up at 3 a.m. with a sense of dread. The house would seem so different and ominous, like 1,000 eyes were on me, and I was convinced after that. Okay, that one was really short, but I guess the reason why it caught my attention was the idea that there was like the staircase. Um, if you're ever in LA, the Heritage, and I don't think they're describing this exact staircase, but it made me think of this creepy staircase. When there's this place called Heritage Square Museum, and it is in LA, and it's in the Octagon House. If you ever have an opportunity to be in LA and visit this place and see the Octagon House, you have to go. There is this like creepy staircase, and it like coils. You know what I'm talking about? Like it's like a circle shape, just goes up and up. And apparently that's one of their most like haunted houses. But yeah, I never had any like good feelings on it. It was always creepy and scary. But yeah, okay. So this one is from the Liquid Man. When I was a kid, we had a neighbor whose teenage son would help my single mother with stuff like mowing the lawn. Just for privacy's sake, I'll refer to him as Steve. When Steve was old enough, he bought himself a motorcycle. Early into his ownership, he unfortunately lost control of the motorcycle, crashing it and it killed him almost instantly. His mom was, of course, absolutely destroyed of the news. Anyways, 5 to 7 years later, my mom and her friends stayed at a haunted hotel. And for shits and giggles, this hotel had a supposed medium. So they just went and saw the medium. While talking to her, the medium said that there was someone there holding something blue, claiming to be named Steve. He said that he wanted his mom to know that he felt no pain and was out like a light. Since it had been some time, it took my mom a minute to realize who this Steve could be, but it clicked for her after a couple of hours. When she came home, she brought it up. She brought it up to Steve's mother, who pretty much instantly burst into tears. She told my mom that Steve apparently had a blue childhood blanket that he'd carry around the house with him all the time. Even up until this week, even up until the week he passed away, which is what the medium saw him holding. There is absolutely no way for her to have known any of this information, as we live states away from the hotel's medium. Okay, that's a good one. That reminds me of the story that I've told people before, and if you haven't heard it, I'll say it here. um, Hi, Song Theory. Oh my God, thank you. Oh my God, you guys should check. If no one knows or has checked, I'm sure they do though, because your stuff is great. Check out Song Theory. Has a lot of good content. I love your stuff. Thank you. So you know what's interesting is my mom had a younger brother that passed away well before I was ever born, and I had no idea of this. And when I was in my stages of being a skeptical, like atheist, my first real experience with the medium, they brought up my mom's younger brother. And I think I've told the story to you guys a couple of times, but I'm just simplifying it. Um, but she brought up my mom's younger brother, and I had no idea of the situation. Um, when the medium was telling me this information, I was like, no, no, that's not true. And then later on, I would find out that like that was my mom's younger brother who died in the military when he was in El Salvador. And there's no way he would have known that. Like, because this is back then before, I know phones now you can look up people, but the fact that even if it was in this day standards, like he died in El Salvador and this was forever ago, there's like, you can't really like look that stuff up like that. Which creeps me out. And that's what the story reminds me of. Just really, yeah. So those were all the stories from this post of like, what's your story that made you believe in ghosts? And yeah, feel free to share any of your stories if you have any. But that was a really good. I really liked that one. That was a really good thread. What connection, if any, do owls have to the paranormal? Okay, this is gonna be a good one. So I feel like there's a lot of superstition with owls. Like my mom has told me stories of La Lechusa, and if you guys don't know the legend of La Lechusa, he is considered a witch who shapeshifts into an owl and is apparently will kidnap, depending on who you ask, kidnap children, depending on what part of the world. Now, I've done a story on her, but what's frustrating about this legend is that it states that it's only in Mexico and Texas that these sightings have been, but there's plenty of stories in Central America and other, cultures, neighboring cultures that have heard of La Lechusa. So I think it's just a really interesting thing that they're like, it's only here. But there's so many cultures that have had superstitions around owls. Some people think that they're good omens. Some people think that they're omens of death. You just don't want to see it at night, or all kinds of stuff. Like even now I'm looking at this thread and it's like owls are not what they seem, which I don't know. I think for me personally, I'm not afraid of owls. I don't think they're bad omens. I think that just with any animal, they have their own significance. But yeah. Oh, the other connection that people have with owls is UFO stuff. Was it what was the movie that the patients are connecting owls with UFO or like aliens? I don't remember the movie. I should know it because it scared me. Does anyone know that movie? I don't know. But there's also that. well, this is a story. It has a pretty decent quote. I have a great horned owl nest in the backyard, and screech owl boxes nearby. Owls are owls, a little creepy because they can fly almost bush, almost brush you without a sound, and nocturnal, but meh, they are fine. Then there are the messengers that are like owls, but have a loud, unearthly call unlike any bird, and it's pretty terrifying. If you hear it, you will know. The sound will raise the hairs on your neck, and the arms send a chill down your spine. The messenger will sit outside your window and call. They are the messengers of death, notifying you that someone close to you just passed. For me, once I got over the shock and realized that it was, I began thinking of who it could be for. Each wrong answer, would call again. After the right guess, they fly off, and there's a heavy silence and pin in your stomach. The messenger has come to me multiple times with 100% accuracy. There's always a phone call in the morning from a family member, and I'll pick up the phone and ask if they died, and they'll ask who called before to tell me this. At first, my mom didn't believe me, but now it happened a few times. My wife slept through 2 of them and said she wanted to hear it, so I woke her up this last time, and she was too scared to move. I had to pull her out of bed. I guessed names for quite a while, and it was not leaving, so I said maybe it's not here for me. She tried a few names, and when she said her aunt's name, it left. She cried and held me, then immediately called her mom. It was 1 a.m. Her mom said her sister had died an hour earlier, and she hung up the phone with her daughter. Oof, that one was a good one. That one was a good one, the messenger of death. Okay, that one was pretty creepy. Okay, I don't think I see any other stories in here. No. Okay. Okay, so there's this one. Someone wrote this one, but no, but won't read that one. All right, yeah, that one was pretty good. Let me go back. We're gonna do spooky photos. Caught in the CCTV footage in a mall at night. Oh, do you guys see that? If you're on my YouTube, you can see it. If you guys join me on the YouTube side, you can see what we're watching or like anything. There's a footage of this like object moving, and it has a lot of upvotes. I'll upload it and save it in case anyone wants to see it again. But yeah, that is pretty creepy. What is that? Okay. But I think that might be staged. I don't know. I find it hard to believe. I don't think they can't move that fast. Okay. So, okay, well, I'll read this one. I heard my mother calling my name. So I grew up in the backwoods of Connecticut in a very old area. It was next to a farm. So when I was younger, my older brother and father had multiple ghost stories about the property we lived on. My mother still lives there, and one night my father saw an opaque figure of a girl in a white dress floating across the backyard. Another time, my brother was in the bathroom and heard something hit the window. He looked outside and saw a girl in a white dress. And yet, another time, my father was getting in the car with my brother around 6 a.m. to drive to school, and they both heard in a girl's voice, someone yelling the name of our dog at the time. I've never experienced anything other than sometimes hearing the garage door opening, thinking it was my parents arriving home, and no one had arrived. There were other times I would hear the computer keyboard typing at night, so I'd walk to the top of the stairs and see no lights on in the downstairs. Everyone was asleep. Anyway, enough backstory. I really have never had any chilling experiences until about 11 to 12 years ago. I was 27 at the time, and I was home alone at my parents' home, and I was getting something in the basement. And out of nowhere, in my mother's voice, I heard her calling out my name as if to get my attention. It was clear as day. The voice was coming from the same room, and I suddenly froze. And it felt like I was being watched from all around me. To this day, I can't understand what the hell that was all about. But I've heard that if you hear a ghost making a voice no, then it could be a symptomatic of a demonic entity. Never got bad vibes living there, but definitely was sensed, especially if I was sitting downstairs in the living room where there was 2 big glass doors that go to the back porch. Sometimes I'd run upstairs at night because I felt like I was being watched from the windows into the house. It was being in the woods and all. My brother had persistent dreams that a girl drowned in the creek in the woods outside the house. And the other people were involved, at least in his dream, would never or could never find out if anything ever happened on the property. My brother checked with the town records and so forth. Anyway, I figure I share. Legit, nothing has happened to me since. Well, I think we all, if you guys have joined my lives before or have heard me talk about this or watched my content, I've talked about this before where there was something that mimicked my sister's voice when I was a kid. Um, and it wasn't just me that heard it. It was so I have 2 sisters for context. So it was me and my older sister. We were in the room and we heard my other sister that was working like 45 minutes away at a Chuck E. Cheese. And at the time, this was before cell phones, and we heard her like frantically calling my name 3 times outside of the window. And when we checked around, she wasn't there. Called the Chuck E. Cheese and she was cleaning the bathroom. So, yeah, it was pretty creepy. I don't think it's anything demonic. I mean, not that I know of. Now, I've had theories. Yes, I've heard doppelganger stuff, but the one that I found super fascinating in terms of theory was when my mentor told me that. So I had, for context, I had a medium, an indigenous woman who was intuitive and had, the gift of that. She was mentoring me, and she believed that the spirit was actually trying to get me to call my sister to basically buy time so she wouldn't walk out into the parking lot because something bad could happen. Um, so that's an interesting theory on that too. But there's so many theories to that, and either way, it's still weird that like both me and my sister heard my other sister call my name. And then fast forward when I started doing TikToks and doing these lives, I remember my sister and I were having a discussion about that house, and we were walking through that memory. And as I said, I heard my sister call my name 3 times or something mimic my sister's voice and call me 3 times. But my other sister that was there, she heard her name being called 3 times. So I don't know. It's kind of weird. It's kind of interesting. Don't know. Um, but I think there could be a number of reasons why it happens. All right, guys, I am going to end the live. But if you guys want to check me out on YouTube, you can definitely do so. I have when I do the lives, you can read everything with me on there. If not, no worries. You guys are amazing. I love doing these, and I hope you like my new setup. Have you guys noticed the new setup? So there's Johnny, my haunted doll. There's my Alice, and actually, the Raggedy Ann doll is a ghost hunting equipment. Oh yeah, yes, you can see it too. You can see my Alice and Johnny and all of my other fun stuff. But, yeah, I think this was a fun little setup. So, fun little things. Also, I recently did a tour, you guys, and I'm hoping to do a video on it, so just stay tuned for that. But I went to the Heart Mansion in Santa Clarita, and if you don't know what that is, it is this very famous museum, and it's free. Well, the museum isn't free. Well, I think it's closed right now, but you can literally hike up this mansion, and it is from a actor from the Wild West era back in the Golden Hollywood era, and one of the richest celebrities at the time, Amelia Earhart, went to visit that place. Disney. It's a beautiful place, and I went to do a tour there, and some of the people there were saying that they had haunted experiences. So I hope to do a story time on that. So stay tuned for that. Oh, um, but yeah, all right, guys, have a good night. Thank you for joining me. I'm going to end the stream here on YouTube, and I'm going to end it here on TikTok.